Hi, I'm Alice and I'm the Sling Doctor. I'm going to show you how to do a simple hammock carry with a Slipknot finish. I've got a size 2, but you could use a size 1 or a size 3. I'm going to start in the middle and I'm just going to work my thumbs up the fabric and gather it in my fingers. This just means that I've evenly stretched the wrap in that spot. I'm going to then place that on my shoulder and I'm going to check, I'm going to bring it around my back and I'm going to check this top rail, so that's the top sort of inch where the hem is, but not just the hem. I'm going to check that that corresponds with the bit closest to my neck, and it does. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to hold that tight on my chest and I'm going to gradually, strand by strand, pinch the fabric and I'm pulling it taut across my back as I go. It just means that I'm not leaving any slack hanging about on my back. So I'm now happy that that's nice and flat across my back and fairly even. So I'm now going to tie a slip knot. The thing to remember with slip knots is that the passive stays passive. So this piece here, the vertical, isn't going to move at all. This one's going to do all the work. So you can see I've made like a reverse L shape there. I'm going to take it back through this hole I've made here, this V. And then I'm going to let that flop down, so it's flopped back down over itself. Now I'm going to insert this hand here, because I think it just makes life a lot easier. And I'm going to pull this down over the hand, and then under that vertical piece. And then I'm going to grab it in that hand and pull it through. And that's my slip knot. You need to be careful now not to over tighten this bit. And that passive piece is now the piece that moves. So, well, the knot moves down on it. So I've now got a really lovely adjustable knot. And I'm just going to make sure that I'm not tangled up under my knot, so I'm going to loosen it and I'm going to find the outer rail, which is this bit here, and I'm just going to pinch it one strand at a time and just gather it like that, and then I'm going to move the knot back up into that section. So that's really nice because I can now see that if I pull on this strand here, that corresponds with that strand there. Okay. Now you're going to do a lot of the adjusting of this carry before you even put the baby in. So when you put the baby in, there should be very little left to do, which is really nice if you've got a bit of a fussy baby or a toddler who wants to keep getting in and out. One of the tricks here is to get the bit on your shoulder in the right place and then try and keep it there. What I'm doing now is pulling this section, so the whole wrap, I'm going to pull it down so it's where I want my baby's bottom to be. Most people want the baby's bottom somewhere between their hip and the bottom of their rib cage. I tend to go a bit lower, as I tend to go to the hip end of the spectrum, but that's really personal choice and also depends on how big your baby is. So if you wanted more fabric, you could move your knot down and that's created some more. If you wanted less, then you can pull that fabric through your knot. So I'm happy there. Okay, so that's where your baby's bottom is going to sit. but you want your baby's knees higher than their bottom. Generally speaking, it's about a hand's width higher, but again, that depends somewhat on personal preference. So I'm going to take my bottom rail, and actually I'm going to take quite a big section. I'm going to take all of that lighter stripe, and I'm going to get that so it's the height I want it, so about a hand width higher, and I'm going to feed that. I'm going to keep that tight so it's sitting in the place I want it, and I'm going to feed that slack so I can make it tighter all the way around. So I'm holding it here under the wrap, and I know that it's going to correspond with this bottom bit here on my shoulder. So I'm going to take the tension that I've pulled, I'm going to pull it around here, and I'm just going to hold it with my teeth while I take it through the knot. So I've got that there, and I've taken it through. Okay, so I'm going to check, and I'm quite happy with that. So I've actually created a little pouch in there. So I now know that the bit that my baby's bottom is going in is the right height, and the bit where their knees are going to sit is the right height. So this bit of fabric is going to go in their knee pits, and it's going to keep their knees higher than their bottom, which is the position that we're aiming for. Now this section here is going to support around the top of your baby's back. If they're sitting but not quite toddling, then the bottom of then you want the top of their back. If you've got a toddler, then it's actually okay to just go to the armpits, and that's where the section is going to sit. If we were using a newborn, we'd want it to go higher, so we want to bring it to the top of the back of their head and pull it down a bit. But we're not doing this for a newborn. So imagine this is anything from a 3-month to a toddler, because we wouldn't be putting a newborn on our hip quite in the same way. Okay, so I've got quite a lot of space here, but what you can do is actually introduce a little bit more slack into that top rail, just so it's not difficult to get your baby in at all. And that means that's the one section that you're going to have to tighten once the baby's in. So I'm using a demo doll who's based on roughly a 2-month-old baby. Okay, so I've got the baby, I've got the wrap in her knee pits. And I want her on my hip, but I don't want her right in my armpit, so I'm going to have a little bit further forward than on my hip. Now, what I've done here is I've let my knot slip down. So before I pull this up over her bottom, I'm going to shift it. I'm actually going to lift the baby up a bit, and I'm going to shift this fabric back round so that the knot's in the right place. Once I spread the fabric over her bottom, whenever I move her, the wrap's going to move with her. So I want to be sure the knot's in the right place before I spread the fabric. So I've put the fabric right in her knee pit, it's all bunched up still. And then, once I'm happy with the position, I'm going to let her sit right down. So I'm supporting her from flopping, but some of the weight's being taken by the wrap around her knees. Now I'm happy with that. I'm going to check that the top section, so the top rail, is free to move. And actually I noticed her hand's down here, so I'm going to move her hand up. Now that's free to move, So I'm going to pull it up to just over her bottom. Okay, and now I'm happy that that's just over her bottom. I'm going to use one hand as a brake and gradually work that fabric over her back, but without pulling the fabric that I put in her knee pits out of her knee pits. So like I said, I'm imagining this is a 3-4 month old child who's got good head control. So I'm going to take it to the nape of her neck. Okay. So I put all this slack here that I created earlier to get her in easily. I'm just going to take hold of that with one hand. I'm going to pull it from the knot over the side, across her back. And then I'm going to reach for it round the back here. See, I've got loads there. So, taking that slack, I'm going to hold it in my teeth, and then I'm going to pull it through the knot. Okay, and that's it. Now to do some checks, I'm going to check that that I feel safe to be hands-free, which I do. I feel like my baby's secure. I'm going to check her airway. I'm quite happy that I can monitor that airway. You might want a smaller baby slightly higher. But yeah, nothing's blocking her airway. Her hands, with fairly small babies, you want them to have access to their hands. It's alright if they move them down again, but just so that they've got some access. So her hands are up here, which is where I want them. And the fabric is flat across her back. It's not going to be flat around these sides, but just down her spine is where you want to make sure it's nice and flat. Then I'm going to check that her knees are higher than her bottom, and that her pelvis is tilted. Now, by tilted, I mean that she's sitting on quite a high point on her bottom. So I want her bottom to be sort of rolled inward, so that the point that's lowest on her bottom is her tailbone, or near her tailbone. And I can do that by reaching in here and getting her knees, and then getting my fingers around to where her hips are and tipping as if I'm tipping a glass. Okay. So I'm quite happy with that now. The beauty of this carry is that now I've done this, it's very easy to get her in and out. So you can just loosen that top rail by coming round and pulling on that top section again, and pulling it back over her bottom. Pop her down, and actually I can go around either like this, or I can take it off, and then it's just a case of working out how it was put on before, popping it back on, and I know that the top rail is the loose one and the bottom rail is the tight one.